time we know can say this. So over internet, so and also traditional media, right? Two parties. And I just say be a leader. That be we minority inside na leader and lady, but majority inside there. And honorable as the Afenyo Markin, I just say minority leader. And a lawyer, and I said Mr. Sammy Gyamfi, I just saw majority no a backing. And I just saw Mudi Ayem. It's on this side, honorable as the Afenyo Markin, eka. And then on this side, lawyer Sammy Gyamfi, so eka. And then you, but wait, they want to make I got 624. That's all. So maybe a subscribe button as well. Now I click a bell notification icon. It's all about GOLDBOD and Office Bank of Ghana. IMF reports about that one saying our more chess Ghana abayino aboka maybe 20 billion Ghana cedis. I got 624. That's all. So maybe a subscribe button as well. Now I click a bell notification icon. So now make a for GOLD.house and a ediamount. Go way a GOLD and your GOLDBOD. GOLD.house for a ton home appliances papa. Rice cooker, blender, fridge, microwave, washing machine, air conditioners, dryers. Ni na GOLD.4 will be. My country says, "Oh, see fie, maybe I will a bugger out twin car plane ticket in Bagana near the open man for fixing home appliances in the car council about that citizen, but to about Chile, some dema fashion GOLD.4, sir. Fana better screen so. Fred, and as I was happy GOLD.4, they'll be more than ready to serve you. Obey to use other appliance no if you GOLD.4. I'm sure we know what else more. Remember back to come so, a honorable Alexander Afenyo Markin, and I should say, only the minority, no. I just say, honorable Alexander Afenyo Markin, lead the minority, and he say, IMF any report about one thing now. IMF reports, no, Yenyankomu because a 2 reports and a GOLDBOD for so our Auditor General's report and a Bank of Ghana so release press statement. So we have about 4 documents you have to go through to give you a clearer understanding of the issues, right? So we'll bring you that report in another video. But as I report in the Muslim, and honorable as an Afenyo Markin, and our Parliament House, or the minority, no, a press conference or honorable. Now, one number because hey, since IMF no at the GOLDBOD for two, I'm a GOLDBOD for a cow, my boy, my Ghana no, above in the open, GOLDBOD for operations no, I'm on my Ghana boka.
Do not belong buried in a footnote. It belongs in the open, where the people who own it can see. And let us be clear about what that figure is. It is not accounting fiction. It is not a rounding error. It is a real loss generated from the activities of GOLDBOD, sitting on the books of Bank of Ghana.
Now, nobody is Afenyo Markin make it clear say GOLDBOD a cow mabono. Ebi anawu who say GOLDBOD because I cannot say Bank of Ghana on books so because GOLDBOD no omo pretty. There's somebody Bank of Ghana I showed and a GOLDBOD new operate to a Bank of Ghana the chintie kaba na Bank of Ghana the nebuaje but say profits by the na GOLDBOD the trinity the profit na.
The GOLDBOD has not incurred any losses because they decided to use Bank of Ghana as its alter ego. When I say alter ego, what I mean is that you use another institution to carry all your burdens on your behalf. So you appear clean. So you can conveniently say that the Auditor General has gone through your books and you do not have losses. But the losses were incurred by you. So how can you record profit and the cost is not incurred by you? Who does this?
GOLDBOD in person may assume losses no and no matter that what tete Bank of Ghana but some media IMF reports na WBA di pefe and my IMF reports no actually say losses no and ye GOLDBOD for operations charges any fees kaka ho and after so exchange rates no kwan GOLDBOD the Bank of Ghana for so trade gold no ni ade no and then am so amasa aka no aba.
The IMF has already told the country where this loss comes from. In its own words, the losses, quote, are a combination of service and asset fees paid to GOLDBOD, discounts on gold sold to off-takers, into bracket exporters, and most importantly, exchange rate losses from the spread between Forex Bureau rates paid to purchase gold and the city reference rate used for BOG accounting, end quote. This can be found in paragraph 13 of the IMF report. This is not our characterization. That is the IMF's. And those involved in fact check can check.
Again, Honorable as Afenyo Markin, read paragraph 13 of IMF reports. I just Honorable as Afenyo Markin, start paragraph 13 will read and from the reports in 26/213, no, page 10. I want to start paragraph 13. No, our chair say IMF for and I can and they are check Ghana by say GOLDBOD about Ghana cat. GOLDBOD about Ghana cat, baby $1.7 billion. I just say, oh my Ghana can so young, who converted the Ghana cedis to my baby 22 billion. A kind of GOLDBOD actually, and they are bread Ghana by no way in I can't Ghana bought.
Anyway, the IMF says that, quote, in 2025, the significant scaling up of the domestic gold purchasing program operations led to losses of 1.7 billion US dollars. 1.5% of GDP, almost entirely related to the gold for reserve dot purchase. This amounted to a loss of 17% of the value of the dog gold sold by BOG. On whose behalf? GOLDBOD. This is here. It's here.
Now GOLDBOD no and your more position of Master Daka say GOLDBOD aboka and your monomoka IMF neka we come no babeka idea come back say bia o mo no Master da and o mota obi IMF neka
not teething trouble. This is a structural bleeding of our national purse, and it was not the opposition that found it. I repeat, it was the IMF's own economists, and the government has accepted that indeed these losses are true.
Now, where Honorable as an Afenyo Markin press conference or no enra right now and that and lawyer Sammy Gyamfi so through presidency accountability series which is equivalent to a press conference so to say right but a government in a facilitating press conference no and it's a lawyer Sammy Gyamfi cause what was it deal so Honorable as an Afenyo Markin a throw warning nepo one friend was Alexander Afenyo Markin also one Alexander one.
Today's engagement, ladies and gentlemen, is simply intended to address a number of baseless allegations and deliberate falsehoods concerning the operations and financial health of the Ghana Gold Board that have been propagated by certain individuals in recent times. Of particular concern is a persistent campaign of lies being waged by one Alexander Afenyo Markin and his ilk against the Gold Board over the past couple of months. This sustained, relentless campaign reached a reckless crescendo yesterday at a press conference addressed by him within the precincts of Parliament. Afenyo Markin's modus operandi, which can no longer be allowed to go unanswered, is to repeat the same tired falsehoods as often as possible and on many platforms as he can, in the hope that repetition will somehow transform fiction into facts and mislead unsuspecting members of the public. The Gold Board therefore deems it necessary that the record be set straight once and for all to prevent him and others like him from continuing to distort the remarkable performance and transformational impact of the Ghana Gold Board. First, ladies and gentlemen, Afenyo Markin and his followers alleged on several occasions on the floor of Parliament and in the media that the Gold Board made losses in its gold trade operations in the year 2025. This claim is a barefaced lie, which has been debunked time without number by the Gold Board. The audited annual reports and financial statements of the Gold Board for the year ended.
Also, Honorable as an Afenyo Markin, on an inquiry for Mokaka, what I say, and a moko no mutuam draw, a cancer no credit, a different Gold Board, or Mujumedi or Mudino at home. Nasa me a hefa, and an IMF report no, a state here, say Gold Board and a boka, Gold Board aboka be. In fact, Gold Board operations, based on Auditor General's reports, in say Gold Board ne krano, omo expenditure lower than revenue omo generate here as Gold Board. Almost as was surplus crowd or honum. Omo printing 50 copies. Omegma obi grab a copy now.
And today, to settle this matter once and for all, I brought to this auditorium a copy of the annual report and financial statements of the Good Board, prepared and published by the Auditor General, not Sammy Gyamfi and the Good Board. We don't audit ourselves. Now, if you check page 12 of this report, you will see that the Good Board on its own, from its own operations, generated total revenue of close to 1 billion Ghana cedis and kept expenditure just around 109 million Ghana cedis. And so that is what we mean by operational profit or surplus of 907 million. It means that if you took all the revenue we generated as an organization and you deducted our expenditure from it, we had 907 million left. Now, because in the 2025 budget statement, government budgeted a revolving seed capital as equity for the newly established Good Board of 4.5 billion Ghana cedis, which monies hit our accounts on or about 30th of December 2025. Those funds had to be added to the revenue of the Good Board because they were not encumbered, they were not depleted, they were not dissipated. And that is why the overall surplus is 5.4 billion. And this reporting was done by the Auditor General under what is known as IPSAS guidelines. And the chartered accountants and auditors understand this very well. So we brought 50 copies, and we are going to distribute to you the audited financials of the Good Board for 2025.
But with respect to this particular Auditor General's report, Honorable Afenyo Markin, I want a press conference. I say, hey, only say Auditor General office, no, right? They didn't see the whole picture. And to grab what's in ABA, Omoka say Good Board, operating in surplus, any other, who the whole picture.
We therefore reject any attempt to answer the public concerns merely by pointing to Good Board's reported surplus. Yes, we concede that it is the Auditor General that has conducted an audit, but the Auditor General was not given access to the full picture. If the Auditor General knows that indeed the costs of Good Board's transaction were borne by Bank of Ghana, Auditor General would not declare surplus in its accounting reporting. Therefore, Good Board profitability and the profitability of the transaction it executed for BOG are two different matters.
But Ebia, some mayor IMF for Abemi, IMF for some mayor independent auditee, and Ebia, Auditor General Bemusa, Ghana ka. Maybe 22 billion Ghana cedis.
Ghanaians must also remember how this story developed. When initially the fifth review raised concerns about the Gold program, the discussion centered around an estimated 214 million quasi-fiscal loss identified through the September 2025 report. The IMF explained that losses arose from the trading activities, fees and exchange rate movement, and specifically called for greater transparency, governance and risk management around the Gold Board linked channel of the domestic gold purchase program. We were subsequently told that Gold Board itself had made no loss. However, Section 13 of IMF country report, as quoted supra, stated. The real question, therefore, is what did Ghana lose from the transaction? The IMF has now answered the question, which I've quoted supra, for the full year, an equivalent of 22 billion cedis. The Ghanaian taxpayer ultimately stands to lose on this.
That's Sammy Gyamfi. Ekabe, omoboka. So bisi omoboka na say we omoboka. Na ebi obi beg feel say bia o say kaba dia no mo yi dia share Bank of Ghana. Ene so mo yi dia share Bank of Ghana. What does it? Ene so mo yi dia share Bank of Ghana. And asa e kan kra na IMF e kan paragraph 13 obe kan amawiase nyina ate. Nti ende lawyer Sammy Gyamfi.
The second and last is the IMF report on selected issues. which was published on the 4th of August. Paragraph 13 of that report speaks about the domestic gold purchase program. And that is what it says. DGPP operations have generated significant losses for BOG. Losses in 2024. So if you are watching me, you should be asking yourself whether there was GOLDBOD in 2024. Losses in 2024 were equivalent to almost $400 million, 0.5% of GDP, 1/3 of which were related to gold for oil. In 2025, the significant scaling up of domestic gold purchase operations led to losses of over $1.7 billion. So the IMF tells you what led to the losses. They are saying the significant scaling up of the program. It is there, black and white. Then, almost entirely related to G4R Dory purchases. This amounted to a loss of 17% of the value of Dory gold sold by the BOG. Losses accrued on gold trades are a combination of service. This was the only reference to the GOLDBOD here. So listen, losses accrued on gold trades are a combination of service and asset fees paid to GOLDBOD, discounts on goods sold to off-takers, and, most importantly, exchange rate losses from the spread between Forex Bureau rates paid to purchase gold and the CD reference rate used for BOG accounting. Survey data suggests that Ghanaian ASGM prices are among the highest in the region. These accounting losses partly reflect valuation effects rather than economic cost. Blah, blah, blah. These are the relevant portions. So, ladies and gentlemen, these are the words of the IMF. Not to suggest that the words of the IMF are sacrosanct, but it is important for us not to attribute to the IMF what they have not said. They have not said that the GOLDBOD is the one that caused the Bank of Ghana to lose $1.7 billion, as I have clearly demonstrated to you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, aside the fact that the new false narrative of Afenyo Markin grossly misrepresents the IMF's findings, I will demonstrate to you with facts and sound logical reasoning that fees paid to an agent by a principal based on a contract for agreed services cannot be reasonably said to be the reason for losses incurred by the principal. And that the IMF mischaracterized fees paid to the GOLDBOD as one of the components of losses incurred by the Bank of Ghana in 2025 under the domestic gold purchase program. I shall also demonstrate to you that the new false narrative of Afenyo and his followers that the GOLDBOD is to blame for losses incurred by the Bank of Ghana under the domestic gold purchase program is bereft of fact and common sense.
Actually, say baby, IMF bought GOLDBOD D. Paragraph 50 no
program, not incompetence or mismanagement. According to the IMF, that loss was as a result of the scaling up, the expansion of the program. The IMF also stated that these accounting losses partly reflect valuation effects. In particularizing what the IMF considers to be components of this loss, the IMF listed 3 things, which included fees paid to the GOLDBOD under the domestic gold purchase program. This is the true context within which the name of the GOLDBOD featured relative to losses under the DGPP in that reference IMF reports. So I want to read the relevant portions of that report, because most of the times they come in the media and they say the IMF has said that GOLDBOD has made a loss of 1.7 billion. And nobody questions them to point out which part of the IMF report said that. They say that the IMF says that GOLDBOD is the reason for the loss, and nobody questions them to provide the proof. And we are all talking about IMF report, IMF report. The fact checkers must get to work. What does this IMF report say? Now, let's first of all start with the seat review on the ECF, that report published by the IMF just a few weeks ago. And the provision in that report on domestic good purchase program can be found on page 27, paragraph 50. This is what the IMF said. The domestic good purchase program weighed on the financial sustainability of the BOG. The DGPP, which is the short form of domestic good purchase program, on which the BOG relied to accumulate reserves to intermediate effects to the private sector, has generated losses of 22 billion, which is 1.5% of GDP in 2025. A government cost-sharing agreement at end 2025 involving the transfer of bonds with a par value of 5 billion cedis in March 2026 resulted in the breach of the ceiling on BOG claims on the central government and public entities at the end of December 2025 and end March 2026. In July 2026, the BOG Gold Board and the government signed a memorandum of understanding formalizing the transfer of the domestic good purchase program activities from the BOG to Gold Board and eliminating related BOG quasi-fiscal risk. An external auditing firm is conducting a special audit of the domestic gold purchase program from its inception, and the inception is 2021, whose results should be available in 2026 Q3. Domestic gold purchase program related losses coupled with high cost of open market operations and exchange rate valuation losses resulting from CD appreciation worsened the BOG's negative equity position to 6.7% of GDP. This is all they said about domestic good purchase program. Nowhere in this report is Gold Board accused as having caused any loss incurred by Bank of Ghana.
Now, Bank of Ghana kano enya car obetumi aka say be a mismanagement be and of course they be a policy no.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, what is the Gold Board's official position on this issue of domestic good purchase program losses? Because somebody may get the impression that because we are defending ourselves against a lie peddled against us, then it means that we are saying, oh, Bank of Ghana is to blame, or we are throwing Bank of Ghana under the bus. No, that is not the case. The position of the Gold Board has been stated by my good self, my humble self, time without number, that the losses recorded by the Bank of Ghana under the domestic good purchase program since inception, not just in 2025, is not because of mismanagement or incompetence by the current managers. But those losses are a product of policy design. It was the MPP that designed the domestic good purchase program that way, that they will not pursue profits, but they will pursue foreign exchange. Because at the time they had no access to the capital market to borrow on the Eurobond market and bring in dollars to show up, the currency. So they chose foreign exchange over profit by policy design.
Kwa mo first design a policy na how policy ne kra no enyo mo no mudi kai design here and before the kai design here November 2022.
And that is why since 2021 that program never made profit. And that is why they announced in the year 2022 November that effective January 2023 they were going to buy gold at spot prices. It was the MPP that introduced spot gold purchases in Ghana.
It is obi ka se eka na IMF ka se eka any idea eka na nye because omo mismanage what they say eka na nye because e bia obi di sika bia na se bibi because of policy no say no musi shape policy ni si fa ye enema sa aka no enye ka hu bia sa
of Ghana. Yes, the loss may be bigger because according to the IMF the program was scaled up, it was expanded. Not because somebody stole money or somebody was incompetent. But in this case, you see measurable, economic benefits. Unprecedented currency appreciation of 41%, which led to inflation coming down for 12 consecutive months. You saw a drop in the public debt by more than 100 billion Ghana cedis and significant savings to the government. That is what we are saying, that this was the price the Bank of Ghana had to pay under this program, poorly designed by the erstwhile government for the stability we enjoy. We are not saying that somebody at the Bank of Ghana has done anything wrong. So let's get that clear.
Now what's it? So no boy like the Afenyo Markin say on person we invite no for debate because I'm no lawyer Sammy Gyamfi na calling for debate, which is true. Honorable as an Afenyo Markin ekan enra. So on person majority the best stop because on prepare with motion. So almost as back to parliament on better parliament in himself. Parliament in free lawyer Sammy Gyamfi mbra because on that gold border no more to tona no. And besides say quite by the fast so also bu akonta ache Ghana for na Ghana for who no jai say or did any makoko sie or Bank of Ghana nim no.
Intino parliament bia ya the motion for ever. Some motion where you be dealing with the $1.7 billion, which is equivalent of 22 billion. And no, sa ekano and you be someone gold board. It is a gold board for some my crowd dia. Omudi can chair new majority leader. Onimnyam for agaga non ti asese. And Kobani so much 189 no ebe blocko. Yes, speakers who say emotion no eba more for technicalities in back. Then Kobani say ya approve here, ya ni say for the sake of governance, for the sake of transparency. We the minority will not relent on this. The gold board has thrown a challenge that it is ready to debate this issue. If indeed it is ready, then we propose to the majority, don't stop us the second time. Don't use your 189 to vote against an invitation to gold board for a probe into what accounted for the 22 billion losses. Don't use your supermajority to stop scrutiny. It is your own man, your darling boy, that called for this. So, majority, please, our motion is ready. We will file it before we get back next week. And we pray that you, the majority in parliament, will fully coerce the minority. Something must be done. We need money for the hospitals. If government says there's no money to complete the Agenda 111 project, if government is still borrowing, yet it can find 22 billion, and this 22 billion, according to the IMF, is vanished into thin air. Sikana ira, sikana she, sikana wahi. Intanya temdidi. Yesre, ye duma. Yesre Ghana mai. Munta yechi. Nebe bia 22 billion wonu. Ye nya ye hwehwe. Enye personal attack, enye obi, ene sebi ye jealous, and ye time no, ene ye nebi. This is a complete policy failure. Institutional failure. A buying promising reset no, and living up to expectation. Private sector soon they are burdening the private sector with taxes. Ghana for electricity are buying almost 30% electricity tariffs. Who got up petrol? Almost charge you 1 Ghana cedi per liter. I say up to me, and you want promise here 1 job, 3 shifts. I don't assume.
And the lawyer Sammy Gyamfi so kasa no say. So Honorable as an Afenyo Markin, or a minority leader. And when you also have a letter, they are called parliament. Obet crime and public accounts committee name. Abebe in one obeba. What I say? Why minority leader? Only the packet or parliament house. Only I have a letter no kind of only press conference no man in bra.
There's been a call for a parliamentary probe, and I've already stated on public record that I'm waiting with bated breath for Afenyo Markin's invitation. And I don't know why he's delaying and holding press conferences when, as minority leader, he can get the Public Accounts Committee to summon me tomorrow or today, and I will appear. I saw him dabbling in some confusion about standing orders of parliament, and the fear that the majority may oppose a call for a probe into this matter. Well, I have in all humility, reached out to the new majority leader in Parliament, Honorable James Agaga, and I pleaded with him that even if Afenyo delays in extending this invitation, he should extend the invitation to me. And I'm ready to come tomorrow. You don't need any special motion. You don't need any special order by the Speaker. Just get Public Accounts Committee to invite us. And come and sit down there and come and demonstrate to the whole nation where the Gold Board made losses or how the Gold Board is to blame for losses made by another institution. We are waiting for that.
No, when they say, I was saying journalist, no. So Honorable as an Afenyo Markin Beka Bibia, holding to the highest level of proof. Honorable for proof back. Honorable Asama okay page say, Honorable Asama okay to say because the Honorable as an Afenyo Markin now, and smear campaign. Or person the good a human or no Sammy Gyamfi and I say Gold Board who think and one Honorable as an Afenyo Markin person yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, I want to urge you, our friends in the media, in all humility and the Ghanaian public, to hold Afenyo Markin and others who make allegations about Gold Board losses to the strictest standard of proof, particularly in the light of the detailed facts I have placed before you today. Let me state that the persistent noise from people like him does not arise from any genuine quest for accountability or any sincere desire to interrogate the operations of the Gold Board. Rather, it is a part of a calculated smear campaign aimed at undermining the significant contribution Gold Board is making to the economic transformation agenda of President Mohammed's administration.
The Honorable as an Afenyo Markin here now, for selfish benefit in here. Omo person omo na omo yes na ebia o wa pe bi kakra de omo no ma gomsem ono de onye.
Afenyo Markin's continuing antics must therefore be seen for what they are: a desperate smear campaign by persons who have specialized in sophistry and political blackmail in pursuit of selfish ends. These are devious extortionists who will come at you with lies to tarnish your reputation in the hope that you will fold and settle for what they call, quote, compulsory arbitration, and oil their palms. Well, this time around, they found their own target. The Ghanaian people deserve serious public discourse founded on facts, evidence, truth, and not endless recycling of falsehoods in the hope that repetition will lend them credibility and turn fiction to facts. Gold Board will remain focused on its mandate.
And then the last Sammy Gyamfi kasa sa ma say, "Edu baby no. Now to most of the Honorable as an Afenyo Markin. Any me from. Yeah, that's the honest truth, right? Because okay, I say, Honorable as an Afenyo Markin no, say no kasa and no chese mu no kasa or no Sammy Gyamfi no, or more kai unu se ochine bi no, say omo ko opposition a ni bail condition e be chen aso Roman aso dan.
10 million cedis yetumi frɛ wɔ Iyoko. Na wakɔda hɔ na yɛse fa ejapade a asumboɔ for branch am bail. Nani Gold Board for bail de abeye hu. Tio me ba o we de sa 22 billion losses here almost Gold Board aboke. And then who bail? Ezika ben na yedi beji bail. Oh, we as said yet here. Yes, wo wi ofun sa na wa hwe won sa. We as aye wono se tumi ba won sem na se wo de tata obi a hweniye NDC for nam MPP for abokrono MPP for abokrono MPP 40 say MPP 40 say gold keke mun koton no gold mun koton gold Makoboka 22 billion cedis. Afi baako.
Enti ene ye no. Ena na Sammy Gyamfi di anu ye ba no. Ena na Sammy Gyamfi si hwe. Honorable as an Afenyo Markin. E ma no wo ECG no. Okoye ECG boss no. Obo ECG ka be 8.2 billion. Ono kra no. Ya nche ne nko ya ma say e fa bail condition je chenche embu ni komu.
Well, I believe you should know me better. My good brother Felix says something. He says politics is a contact sport. So when you are involved in politics, you are involved in boxing. You should be ready for tackles, you should be ready for punches. And some of us are vaccinated against political mischief. We've taken the vaccine, so we are not worried at all. But what I want to say is this. If the one under whose tenure has bought chairman as ECG, where ECG recorded a loss of 8.2 billion, is not facing any onerous bail terms.
I can't know Sammy Gyamfi. Ever since on a gold body, or my refining gold, what's some of the value about a gold? Or no one I wouldn't record, NC.
And how can Sammy Gyamfi, under whose tenure the gold board has exported 170 tons of gold through former channels and brought into this country over 17 billion United States dollars in 1.5 years, face onerous bail terms? Under your tenure, not a gram of gold produced in Ghana was refined in Ghana. Today, over 9 metric tons just this year of gold we have bought refined in Ghana. We are changing the value addition story.
Now the other ball is the Afenyo Markin kano. Sabi, but for Kasim no, or the little two obia wako akwakotsina and kwankwen and I say you can say and Saria say what he say no means safufu na banani so no kakan sem who say and some kwa and on a ball as an Afenyo Markin no eh.
So you see, such statements are reckless. They are what I call the fanciful efficiencies of of a palm wine bar. You take it as comic relief. And it is very sad. See, when we say this, he says we are not insulting him.
Now, Sasa, question say, sit your number as an Afenyo Markin as minority leader, first, no, majority leader. City party, the lower name be doing it on a ball as an Afenyo Markin level, would they use and quiet? Because first, no, your ball papa who swam Kumamo, or one of my majority leaders now. Then when and as a minority leaders, no, then when young woman, but I'll show no ball as an Afenyo Markin, yeah.
This is somebody occupying a seat once occupied by the venerable G.H. Mensah, the venerable Papa Uzwankoma, or Seiche Mensah Bonsu. Look at the depth and the substance of these personalities. When they rose to speak on Parliament, look at the command they commanded across the aisle. And look at how this seat has now been so bastardized and depraved by a noisemaker who cannot even read and research and get his facts right. So,
now, so no ball as an Afenyo Markin. Planning bill conditions are ebia na adwim and no Sammy Gyamfi no ebeko jail no mama the bill no mama set our bill conditions in na e wo no ball as an Afenyo Markin adwim.
I will go to prison in his brain and I will have onerous bill terms in his brain. I'm not afraid of any intimidating tactics because we are serving Ghana in good conscience and our resource and posterity will speak for us. Thank you very much.
Inti ansem no ena shocking na aba na mwa e ma na aba na mwa be try say hey otie Sammy Gyamfi na the Sammy Gyamfi kai na no otie na no say did I hear Sammy Gyamfi say Afenyo Markin's comments are fanciful effusions of a palm wine bar and that it is very sad. O say the meti no na Sammy Gyamfi kai na any effusions fanciful effusions, right? It say bibia ba obi adwini mu o imagine bibi but who they say influenced by say nipa no anom insefufuo what say nti eno na ba na mo bi say Sammy Gyamfi kai no na otie yi ana oh very sad Sammy woman we no Sammy be go but woman we no Sammy I got 624 on about as an Afenyo Markin enya fa no ye my because on no di kan a press conference no after say lawyer Sammy Gyamfi kan say minority no ignorant and on about as an Afenyo Markin say Sammy Gyamfi into me hand pick obi back attack no out of the caucus omo yina na adwen ho and on bekasa omo kasa we enso no lawyer Sammy Gyamfi again a hand pick on about as an Afenyo Markin and I just send here Odeno, a future form. I just are shocking the lives of Nanaba and Mwamo. But honorable Ekowasefwa, Ababe Drope, a Yememono, our social media. So much sure, Sebeya, and parliaments, and to ensa, and fa and free lawyer Sammy Gyamfi, and our face of Bank of Ghana for number be in Semano, and for a car, IMF no extra Bank of Ghana. Through the domestic gold purchase program no on the gold board share no abo my Ghana. Aha ego 24.